So, for one, my name is Genesis Craig, and I'll be doing research on understanding aggression and the role of personality, brain development, and environmental risk. So, the overview will be past research, hypothesis, abstract research, and then methods in the conclusion. My apologies. Okay, so first thing I'll be talking about is psychological and social influences on aggression. So, psychological and social variables play a major role in shaping aggression. Research shows that when children are exposed to violence early on, they are more likely to develop emotional, cognitive, and behavioral difficulties that contribute to aggression later in life. Next, I'll be talking about aggression in intimate relationships slash impacts on children and adolescents. So, intimate partner violence is another major social factor, and individuals exposed to or experiencing IPV often develop PTSD, depression, and even substance related issues. This shows how aggression doesn't just affect behavior, it impacts mental health long term. And when children grow up in violent homes, when we see major developmental consequences, we see many struggle with emotional regulation, impulsivity, and higher levels of aggression as they reach adolescence. Okay, now we'll be going into the social learning and peer influence aggression. This part is plays a major role in shaping aggression, especially during adolescence. Through social learning, young people imitate what they see, particularly behaviors from peers who are often viewed as dominant or influential. These peer reinforcement can also normalize aggression when you combine that with risk factors like early trauma, lack of family support, and stressful home environments. Next, we'll be going into the neurobiological factors and aggression in brain regions linked to aggression. So the HCP data, which is the Human Connectome Project, will not link directly to the participants. Instead, it will provide reference neurobiological categories associated with the emotional regulation and aggression, and it's used to contextualize hypothesis one by comparing behavioral health data with established brain function patterns, and then the research will show that aggression is tied to structural and functional differences in several major brain regions. Okay, now we'll be going to the variability in the neurobiological conclusion. So this is though, even though many studies identify brain differences related to aggression, the findings are not always consistent. Some research shows increased gray matter volume in certain regions, while others find reductions in different areas. These differences can come from variations in the sample, the type of aggression being studied, age differences, and so on and so forth, how the brain was measured, and etc. Now we'll be going into personality traits and aggression. Research shows that the personality traits shape how people express aggression. The big five traits connect to aggressive patterns, and envy can be expressed in two forms: benign, which leads to self improvement and more premeditated aggression, and malicious, which is aimed at harming others and is tied to impulsive aggression. So TBI, developmental disruptions and proposed study direction. Aggression is usually separated into instrumental aggression, which is planned, and reactive aggression, which is impulsive. Tools like the passive aggression scale measure different forms of aggression and help connect personality traits with behavior. The TBI disrupts normal brain functioning and is linked to verbal aggression and poor social outcomes. Pulling this together leads to the hypothesis personality traits will predict aggression, especially in individuals with histories of IPV or TBI. Adolescents exposed to multiple risk factors show higher and more erratic aggression and increased gray matter in certain brain regions, which will be linked to more violent behaviors. So that was one of the hypotheses I just said. Another hypothesis will be proposed that individuals expressing emotions will show higher levels of passive and indirect aggression, particularly when negative reinforcement has shaped their emotional responses. Suggested in the hypothesis three is individuals exhibiting elevated personality disorder traits will show higher aggression scores even after controlling environmental stressors such as childhood trauma and family conflict. The first one is in individuals with higher anxiety levels will display greater levels of aggression than individuals with lower anxiety levels. So the abstract is the measure in the data, the validated psychological instruments for anxiety, aggression, emotional suppression, personality disorder traits, environmental stressors, And then the brain activity classification form, the Human Connectome Project, examines the relationship between the anxiety, the aggression, the emotional suppression, and then the personality disorder traits. And then the participants, the data analysis is the correctional analysis, multiple regression, the hierarchy of regression, and then the purpose is to improve understanding of psychological plus neurobiological predators of aggression. And then it supports early detection and intervention in mental health and inform prevention strategies. So first we'll be talking about the participants, and these demographics matter because major gender and mental health history can influence stress responses, emotional regulation, and aggression. These sorry, I'm going too fast. Psychology majors may have a higher emotional awareness. STEM majors may have a different stress patterns. Mental health history also affects aggression risk, so those variables help interpret results accurately. Well, I'm trying to have like 100 undergrad students ranging from 18 to 25 recruited through psychology participant pool plus student organizations. The expected demographics would be 60% female, 40% male. The majors would be psychology, biology, education, social sciences. 20% expected mental health diagnosis, 30% receiving or receive mental health support. The materials is I'm using a HAM-A because it's a factor structure, clearly separates types of anxiety that relate to emotional regulation. The AQ is selected because it captures multiple aggression dimensions and has a strong criterion validity, and it correlates with real behavior aggression. And then second, I will be using, each measure was chosen because it captures the exact variable. So the PAS is ideal for emotional suppression. The PDQ4 plus captures clinically validated personality traits. And it has a CT, and then we'll be using the CTQ and the family conflict scale. And that accounts for environmental stress that influence aggression. Additional materials, it will be the informed consent, the demographic questionnaire, the debriefing statement, and yeah. So next we'll be going into the procedures. So basically, this must be taken in a private setting. The duration will be 30 to 40 minutes. Participants will be receiving a full debriefing plus mental health resources like I've stated before in the materials. The responses will be anonymous and confidential, and it will be taken through an online qualitative survey. So going into the data analysis. So first, I'm just breaking down my hypothesis even more so you can understand it. The hypothesis 1 is multiple regression, which will give you anxiety predicting aggression. Hypothesis 2 is the correlation plus the regression, which will give you the emotional suppression predicting aggression moderated by the reinforcement history. And then hypothesis 3, which is a hierarchy of the regression personality traits predicting aggression beyond environmental stress. Excuse me. So now we're going to the validity, validity. I'm sorry, that word is always hard for me to pronounce. And then the reliability. So each measure now includes that. The hand-willed somatic versus psychic anxiety, the AQ criterion validity, behavior aggression correlations, and the PAS convergent with emotional avoidance, and so on and so forth. So next steps in my research would be to first refine and pilot test the survey, making sure the participants understand all items in the study run smoothly. After receiving RIB approval, I'll be recruiting around 100 undergraduates. And then once the data is collected, I'll check reliability for all measures, clean the data set, and run the regression analysis for each hypothesis. Based on what I find, the next stage of the research could expand beyond undergraduate and possibly incorporate in real neurobiological data rather than using the HCP as a reference model. This is also going into that. And then my conclusion is basically past research shows that aggression doesn't come from just one source. And with the help of my study, I hope to focus on multiple variables at once, which can improve early intervention. Thank you and have a great day.